Imola Grand Prix. So returned to the calendar in 2020 after a 14-year absence. It's hosted a race in every year since then, apart from 2023 when it was cancelled due to flooding. 19 corners around this circuit and one of the trickiest circuits to get an overtake done, with only turn 2 as an obvious opportunity. Due to the importance of track position, we have seen teams favour a one-stop strategy here. However, the teams will need to deal with an added factor of the new C6 tyre this weekend, the softest tyre in the Pirelli range. Verstappen has won the last 3 races here, but it was a close battle with the McLaren of Lando Norris last year, and McLaren is where we will start this preview. Sam, utter dominance from McLaren in Miami. Can we expect to see the same again here?
I think it's highly likely. I'm sorry to crash the positive party so early for those that want a competitive Grand Prix, but I do think that the form book that McLaren show, how on form Oscar Piastri is being, the outright speed that Lando Norris was able to deploy, even though he did finish behind his teammate, I think will carry over quite nicely from Miami to Imola. I think they're quite similar racetracks that they don't have too many very slow corners, and many of them are kind of very fast, flowing corners that all fit together really nicely. I think McLaren does well here. You look at the likes of Suzuka, where, of course, they had a 2-3, and I think they probably would have won that race should you have been able to actually overtake there. Australia, very similar there. Of course, they did very well. Lando Norris picked up the wing. It would have been a 1-2 had the rain not interfered with that. Saudi, they were really, really good there through those fast-flowing corners, and we have a very similar section here at Imola where, apart from the start finish straight into the chicane at the end of that, it's so difficult to make a pass here. So as long as they actually get qualifying right, which has been a weakness of theirs, they haven't really locked out the front row too often so far this season. If they get that right, I do think that the dominance that we saw in Miami will return here in Imola.
Wasn't sure where we were for a second.
For a moment, what track we're going to.
I saw a stat after Miami that the Grand Prix win that they had in Miami was the most dominant they've had since the 2008 British GP that Hamilton won in the rain. That's how good it was. That was quite a while ago, folks. Wow. Harry, do you think we can see similar level of dominance here?
I think it's entirely plausible, but I was going to make the same point as Sam, and that qualifying is going to be super important. We saw here, well, we've seen it for a few years now, but if it's not a wet race, it tends to be, I wouldn't say processional, but overtaking is tough around this circuit. So they need to nail qualifying. And as you say, Sam, it's not something they've really done that much this year, given how quick that car is. I think that's also a compliment to the likes of Max Verstappen, obviously Hamilton in the sprint. It's been very close in quali. So if one of these, these guys can nip in front of the McLarens, we could see a situation like we had in Suzuka, where you have a car out in front that isn't the quickest, but can just hold the lead, hold position because they've got track position. So, yeah, if McLaren can lock out the front row, I would find it difficult to see how anyone can stop them without any divine intervention or chaos. But I think qualifying is going to be crucial because it could well decide the race win. It was the case here last year where Verstappen won, but as you mentioned, Ben, Norris is very close behind, and we were just starting to see the momentum switch from Red Bull to McLaren. I mean, that was kind of the race. It was starting. I know Norris had already won Miami, but it was clear from this race we had here last year that McLaren had the quicker car now, and it was only really Verstappen holding on and having track position to begin with that meant that he won that race. So I think, quality's going to be really crucial if anyone wants to try and stop what is probably going to be a pretty dominant weekend for the Papaya boys.
I'd love to be the one of the three of us to go, no, McLaren will be under a lot of threat from the other 3 teams. We're going to see one of the closest fights that we've ever had in F1 history. But unfortunately, you're both right. It is entirely possible that we see more dominance from McLaren this weekend. Obviously, they've won 5 of the first 6 races, and Miami was probably the best of the lot. I don't think the introduction of the C6 tyre is going to phase them a great deal. In fact, it might even be a good thing for them that we are getting even softer tyres here than we've had in the past, because history tells us, or at least the last 6 races tells us, that McLaren can do a better job than the other teams can on that softer compound. So I don't think that will phase McLaren. And what you said Sam was right in that Suzuka is probably the track so far we've had that is the most similar to what we're going to experience here in Imola. And it does seem strange to say because that was the one race this season that McLaren didn't win. But I maintain that we didn't get to see the full strength of the McLaren on that day. I'm not sure how much they could have won by if they'd started first and second. And yeah, fair play to Verstappen for what he did in qualifying. But I think that car was probably stronger than what it was able to show on that Sunday. And you're right as well that we have seen other similar circuits, maybe not necessarily this year, but last year, where they have performed very well at. Zandvoort, Lando Norris won by 23 seconds. Hungary, Oscar Piastri won by 15 seconds back to the nearest non-McLaren. Two circuits, again, I would say are relatively similar to Imola. So McLaren hasn't really shown a weakness so far this year. Would not surprise me at all if they're dominant. Sam, you've already mentioned a little bit on qualifying and the importance of qualifying here. Would that be enough to give Verstappen at least a bit of encouragement heading into the weekend that he can do something like what we saw at Suzuka?
I mean, it's quite possible. Unfortunately for Verstappen, what he managed to achieve at Suzuka is partially down to the track characteristics that you have there. The turn one is such a long sweeping corner. It's got no heavy braking zone, which will allow for kind of a late lunge into a corner or to allow yourself to go around the outside. There's a lot less jeopardy as well on that corner, where in Suzuka it has a runoff, and the grass only picks up as you essentially exit turn one and it goes into the S section. At Imola, go through that chicane, there's a lot of grass, there's a lot of gravel. If you make a mistake around here, you are more likely than not to pay the price. And I do think that because of how potent the DRS is going to be down the start-finish straight here at Imola, that if Piastri or Norris or both do end up starting behind Verstappen, the DRS being effective from lap 2 onwards means that the gap that they can essentially hold on to before DRS becomes available to them will allow them to close right back up again. And I do think that one of the McLaren's biggest strengths is how much of a monster it is in a straight line, especially with DRS active. It really is a positive of their game. So I think that unfortunately for Max Verstappen, due to the nature of how the first turn takes place here at Imola, holding two McLaren cars off, especially on his own, we don't think Tsunoda's going to be, close to being competitive with him again. I think it's going to be really, really tough for him, almost now impossible if the McLaren is even close to what it was able to achieve in Miami.
I think it's going to be interesting for sure because, what Verstappen was able to accomplish in Suzuka was so impressive. And there is going to be a difficulty in getting overtakes done. I am a little bit worried about the run. It's so weird calling it turn 2. It's technically turn 2, but turn 1 doesn't really exist for these F1 cars. It's just that kink in the straight. But that run down to turn 2, it is a long one. And Verstappen, his starts have been iffy so far this year. I mean, we spoke obviously at length about the penalty that he received at Saudi Arabia. We don't have that discussion if he gets a good start in that race. That's a short run down to a turn 1, and he struggled there. He had a really bad start in Bahrain as well, if you remember. And of course, Miami last time out, the launch was pretty good, but he outbroke himself to potentially open the door for Lando Norris, held on to it, but he was still under threat from one of the McLarens. So even if he were to get pole position here, that is a really important run down to the second corner that he'd have to negate. Having said that, Max Verstappen he'll fancy his chances because he's Max Verstappen first and foremost, but he has applied pressure in qualifying to this point. He knows that Lando Norris is capable of errors. He's made a few so far this year. I was looking at the championship table. Norris is on 115 points. If we were to have a qualifying championship, so you were just to use the same point system, but for where they qualified, he'd be on 94. So he's had to make up for some of his errors in qualifying so far this year. Verstappen has already got 2 poles. And I think maybe from Miami, what was most encouraging was how good he was in the first sector. Like, he was the quickest driver in qualifying in that first sector. We saw the one lap where he made a massive error into turn 1 and he still went purple. I think that first sector is probably more representative than the rest of the lap about what we'll see at Imola. So, as you said earlier, Harry, qualifying is going to be so important because if he gets out in front and he leads through turns 1 and 2, he'll be tricky to get by. He's not known for, I might not be the quickest car today. Come on through. It's all right. I'll take third. That's not Max Verstappen.
I mean, Franz Herrmann.
Sorry, Franz Hermann. Yes. No, they're different people.
Oh, sorry.
They're not the same person.
I understand.
Yeah. Let's move the discussion on to Mercedes, because they are, at least we're led to believe, ramping up their upgrade program. Their first upgrade of the season arrived in Miami per the FIA documentation. And James Allison has said that the upcoming upgrades will be a bit more obvious to the outside world compared to what we had at Miami. The team is prioritizing tire temperature management, an area where, as already stated, McLaren are currently very good at. Allison also noted that whilst Mercedes has shown strong qualifying form, race pace does remain the focus. Harry, can they get in the mix with some of these upgrades coming up? And is it right for them to focus on race pace versus qualifying pace?
I mean, yeah, they really could be. I've been saying this for most of the year, I think. I don't think there's a lot needed for Mercedes to be in this hunt. And when I was saying that George Russell was doing all that he could and was, the podiums he's been picking up could well be crucial down the line, I mean it. I mean, it's looking increasingly difficult for him to be in the championship fight, but you never know. I think it would only take a little bit more for Mercedes to build on what is a solid car. And we, Sam and I think all of us said this in the previous episode on Sunday. That's a very solid car. For the first time in a few years, Mercedes have a solid base to develop off. If they can add a bit of performance, then it could well throw them into the mix properly. And yes, they're right to focus on race pace because I don't think they need to do any more over one lap. I think both of their drivers have proved that car is capable of extracting some good one lap pace. I think in the race, it's sometimes varied as to whether the tyres will hang on or not. I think we saw maybe Saudi Arabia most clearly where they didn't hold on too well, but. Yeah, I genuinely think this, it could really unlock them, the performance of Mercedes and throw them in the mix. The worry I guess they will have is they put upgrades on and they make them worse because
that wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen.
Never ever. I think it's happened a lot over the years. We only saw this last year with the V-carb racing bulls. Where they were quite good at the start of the year, then they put an upgrade on and it turned to poo. So it's definitely plausible, but I think definitely worth them putting these upgrades on because it could well put them in the mix with. Oh, they already are, but more in the mix than they already have been consistently in the mix.
Yeah, they're going to have to hope that I think Miami was a little bit of an outlier in terms of how dominant McLaren were, because George Russell might have finished third in that race, but he was 37.5 seconds back from the lead, which works out to about 2/3 of a second per lap. So again, that might have been an extreme example, and they might just based on circuit characteristics be slightly more competitive here, but they'll be hoping, of course, the upgrade helps them out. And I think they are right to focus on race pace because it would be quite easy with the next couple of races not to go that way. We've got Imola, obviously quite difficult to overtake, and Monaco. If you get qualifying right there and you can hold on to a pole position or a second place, you're in for some good points. But that will fade quite quickly because then we'll start getting into Austria, Silverstone, Canada, where you can make overtakes. And at that point, I think the race pace element takes over. Sam, what's your thoughts on Mercedes' approach?
God, I could say that's been the most boring triple header of all time, couldn't it? Imola, Monaco, and Spain. There's a real risk there.
I will not take slander against Spain.
Oh,
big up Catalonia and the best turn one in motorsport.
Sure. We'll run with that. No, I think they're right to focus on their race pace. Their qualifying has been strong. It's been good enough. It's not been superb, but it's been good enough. Antonelli, of course, having sprint pole. George Russell's been on the front row. They've been mixing it with Verstappen. They've been beating Ferrari. They've been close enough to McLaren that when tracks are able to make overtakes, where you are on a place where it's viable, they could, in theory, be there about. The issue is they're not. Something that McLaren have been so good at, and we've spoken about this so many times already, is the end of stints. And that's because their tyre wear is so effective. A racetrack like Imola, when we are introducing an even softer compound tyre, obviously, that means all the others are shuffling down. So the medium would have been what is the normal soft, and the normal soft is now what is considered the super soft tyre, and the hard is shuffled down to the medium. So we're running on really, really soft rubber that's easy to burn up. McLaren may at the start look like they're only just in front should they get the cars on the front row. But you guarantee the kind of 10 laps before pit stops start to emerge, those gaps will start to eke out. They'll grow and they'll grow and they'll grow. And that's where their advantage really lies. If Mercedes can counter that to balance it, to break even, there's a real chance they stay within striking distance, within undercut distance, and they can actually have a tangible impact on the overall race result. So I think qualifying is there or thereabouts, 85, 90%. It's all right. It's solid. The race pace is more like 60%, and they really need to start closing that gap because, as you said, Ben, in Miami, it was maybe 6 to 7 tenths a lap slower than McLaren. That is a ginormous deficit in Formula One, and they're going to hope that that's an outlier. They've been competitive somewhat in other races when it comes to race pace, but they've never truly looked like threatening a race win. So this is the development that they need to see. I also don't want them to spend too long on developments affecting the current car because we want Mercedes to be a true competitor in the new regulations in 26.
Ferrari exists as well. Barely at this stage. I think, according to what I'm seeing, they're going to bring a small upgrade to Imola, but the bigger upgrade, including the new suspension, it ain't ready yet. Of course, we've got the Spain technical directive that's changing, so it seems as if they're waiting until after that. Harry, upgrades at Imola for Ferrari have gone really well in the past.
Well, last year it made them front-running title contenders, as Carlos Sainz said it would. So.
Is this like reverse psychology? They're not actually very much of an upgrade.
Something lying to our audience at this point.
If we bring a small upgrade, the performance gain is massive. That's how this works.
We struggle.
Who knows? Ferrari could turn up and be excellent this weekend, but then there's also every possibility that they will not be. I think the big upgrade is probably the one they're waiting for. The "it's not ready" line. It just is terrible. But yes,
I'm seeing Spielberg on that, by the way.
It's too late. It's too late in the season. It's too late. The season's gone. Pack it in. What are you waiting to bloody Austria for an upgrade of a season where we end the regulations? Ferrari, pack it in. Commit to next year so we can get our hopes up. We could be disappointing again by April. Come on, you know the cycle. Let's make it happen.
It is not ready.
Al dente, I think we call it.
It's an al dente upgrade. Like for Ferrari could. They can. They're so difficult to predict because they can be in the mix. Miami, they were not in the narrator. They were not in the mix. But for other parts of the season, they have been there or thereabouts. They've just been let down by performance or sometimes things not going their way. I'd hazard to guess they'll be closer than Miami, but I don't suspect they're going to be the ones challenging McLaren. Maybe they'll gain half a second by the fact that it's one of their home races. I don't know, but they'll be hoping and praying that it's not like Miami again because that was terrible.
Yeah. They might well be in a battle with Williams again for fourth fastest team. Maybe they're better than that, but goodness me, it's not looking great for them right now. And welcome back to the grid, Franco Colapinto. His first race at Alpine. Oh boy, you don't know what you're in for. His first race at Alpine, his 10th race in Formula One after his 9 races with Williams last year. Of course, replacing Jack Doohan this weekend. Sam, what are the expectations for Franco Colapinto?
I think the expectations will be high. He made a big statement with Williams when he joined. We've gone down the fast but silly route. That man is either incredibly quick or he's very in the wall. And I respect that in both elements. And we've said this about rookies before. There's so much talent that Colapinto has. He's clearly a very fast racing driver. And I respect that when you're a rookie, sometimes you're going to make mistakes. That it happens. You've got to learn. You've got to grow out of those. I'd rather you have that outright speed, but sometimes crash the car rather than just be consistently average, which is what someone like Jack Doohan was. He was consistently average. He was behind his teammate a lot of the time. He wasn't progressing the way that Alpine wanted. But Colapinto, I think, does have that little bit of je ne sais quoi.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say je ne sais quoi.
You know it. Guys, because we're the same person, Harry. We're mind melding. how long have we been friends now? 20 years?
Sure.
Too long.
Since we were 9.
My point here is, I think Franco Colapinto is really going to turn up. I think Alpine are expecting him to turn up. And I think that he'll be maybe not right there with Pierre Gasly if he's having a really good race weekend, but I don't think he'll be too far off to start with. And I reckon you give it 2 or 3 races, Big Franco will be delivering very quickly alongside Pierre Gasly. And if Alpine are able to actually deliver anything that makes sense and is positive in the world, then there could be a really good lineup here with Gasly and Colapinto.
I'd like to state for the record, I don't like Big Franco.
No? Big Franco?
No.
Okay.
Why, Ben?
No. Why?
Just say it aloud and you'll understand. Just no.
No, please.
Big Franco.
Elaborate.
To be fair, the alternate is Rizapinto, and I'm not sure I like that either.
No, I do like that.
Alpine, it's really difficult to know what the expectation should be for him because that relies on knowing what Alpine are going to be like, and that's impossible. Like, if someone was deputizing for McLaren, I know that car's going to be really quick. Therefore, I know roughly what my expectations for a reserve driver would be, or a new driver coming into the team. If a driver comes in to kick Sauber, I know that car is a toaster, and therefore I can adjust my expectations based on the car being a toaster. I don't know what we're going to get with Alpine because they've kind of shown something at a few tracks and then shown absolutely nothing at a few others. Like Gasly was very good in Bahrain and scored some really solid points despite not having any DNFs from the top guys. I know he had Antonelli drop back outside the top 10, but he got, I think, 7th on merit that day. He was also very good in Saudi Arabia qualifying, and I think would have been on course for points if he didn't collide with Yuki Tsunoda on the first lap. But then Alpine have been utterly awful at the likes of, well, they weren't very good at Miami to start. And you remember like the Chinese GP where they couldn't make it out of Q1. So it depends what Alpine we're going to get. In terms of like Colapinto versus Pierre Gasly, Jack Doohan on average was about 3 tenths back from Gasly, at least in terms of qualifying trim. So that would be a good place to start. The thing about Jack Doohan, though, was there were a couple of times where Gasly out-qualified him by like 6 or 7 tenths, and the gap was really large. And then there were a few occasions where in Miami, Gasly was out-qualified by Doohan, and China, it was less than a tenth that separated them. So there was a bit of inconsistency in those qualifying performances. But I think that an average of 3 tenths would be a good start for Colapinto. Harry, how much are you adjusting the expectations based on what he was able to do last year when he deputized for Logan Sargent?
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's a really tough one to judge here because these are not ideal circumstances. Both times Colapinto has started in an F1 season, he hasn't started at the start of the season. This is now the second time this has happened to him. So it's a tough situation to go in for. And it's not even with the same team. I think with Liam Lawson, you could argue at least he had the same team to go back to. He's now with a completely different team. But luckily that team's got the stability of still having the same team principle. Oh, no, wait. No, that isn't the same either. That's a different as well.
He's just on holiday. Flavio Briatore is just filling in while he's on holiday.
Yeah, in Dubai, forever in hiding.
Oh boy!
Oh. Dodgy Ollie.
How's your brother?
Dodgy Ollie.
Oh boy.
But anyway, for Colapinto, it's tough because he did impress quite a lot last year. I think if he comes in and it's odd to say, like you said, Sam, he's fast but silly, like fast but sometimes in the wall. I think if Colapinto comes in and is slow, but doesn't put it in the wall, that's arguably worse. I think he has to come in and be as fast as he was last year. If he puts it in the wall, and obviously not ideal, don't do that. But if he does, but at the same time is fast, I think that's better than coming in and being slow. So he needs to come in and be on the sort of same pace that he was last year. It'll be interesting to see if he gives Pierre Gasly as much of a headache as he was giving Alex Albon. I suspect not. Also,
I mean, you say that, but look how well Alex Albon's doing. How the car's better. There's every chance that Colapinto could be doing as well.
No, and I totally agree with that. I think probably the level that Alex Albon was operating at last year versus the level that Gasly's operating at this year is not the same. So I think it'll be less trouble for Gasly. He may well give Gasly a headache because Gasly's still laughing at the Lego race because I've never seen a happier man. Have you seen that video? I've never seen anyone happier than Pierre Gasly doing that race.
It makes sense. Like, when everything else is so dysfunctional around you, you have to focus on the bright sparks of life.
Yeah.
Like, I understand it.
Yeah,
Fernando Alonso's face is the best thing I've ever seen.
But yeah, anyway, so it's I think hard to judge for Colapinto, but I think I stand by what I say. He needs to come in and be up to speed pretty quickly, even if that does come with some risk.
Yeah, I think it's difficult not to adjust the expectations based on what we saw from him last year, which might be a bit harsh because, again, he's not even in double digits in terms of the number of races that he's done, but we've already seen what he can do. So if he falls short of that, it's difficult not to judge him for it. And the truth is, like, not only was he good last year in patches, like it was from the off pretty much. Like even Monza, his first race, he didn't qualify very well. He was knocked down in Q1, but he makes up 6 positions. He goes from 18th to 12th. His second race was at Baku, where he gets 8th place, and he's about 2 seconds behind his teammate that day. They had different strategies, but I remember that weekend, Colapinto was on it. And then we moved to Singapore. He doesn't score in the point. He finishes 11th, but he's still pretty competitive. And you'll remember that was the race where he pulled off a move on his teammate into turn 1. And Sergio Perez was all rizzed up, complimenting his defending. And that was just race 3. And then race 4, which we were actually there for, was Kota. And he scored a point there too. So first 4 races, he made an impact. And if we don't see the same thing again, it's only natural to question that. Sam, he's got a 5-race contract. We have discussed this a little bit before. How much pressure does that put on him?
Any normal individual would be under immense pressure. Imagine if you turned up to a new day at work and they were like, 5 days in the office, and we'll see if you deserve another week. You go, I don't know what I'm doing yet. That's quite scary. But Formula One drivers are a different breed. And I think Franco Colapinto is one of those people that we've seen how he acts in front of the media and how he dealt with the pressure of coming into that Williams team and how he handled himself around very experienced drivers. I think he's the kind of kid that's going to relish this opportunity. I think he's going, yeah, give me 5 races and then you'll give me another 5 more. And then when I'm done with that, I say what goes because I'm Rizapinto and I make the shots. I call the shots around here. I really do think that he is going to grab it by the scruff of the neck. There will, of course, be some pressure, but I think he'll thrive in that pressure and I think he'll come out of it. And I would not be shocked at all if Alpine come out with an announcement and basically go, yeah, he's our guy for the rest of the season, and they'll be done with it. He will really have to muck this up big time, I think, to be replaced after 5 races.
I would be shocked if they'd come out with that announcement because it would be more Alpine to just forget they'd said that in the first place and just carry on with him.
Oh, that's going to happen.
This is where he just doesn't turn up for race 6 because they never agreed anything.
Yeah, he's like, oh, we've got no second driver. Oh, wait.
Franco, where are you? Only I have 5-race contract, guys.
Honestly, if we get to a point of Briatore going into the British GP and he'll be asked by the media, so is Colapinto racing this weekend? He'll be like, yeah, of course he is.
Exactly. You can see that happening. Yeah, what do you mean? Of course he is.
We wouldn't do that to a driver.
It's annoyingly believable, isn't it? I think it's time. I think it's time for some bold predictions.
Gather around, little children, and listen to my song about my F1 bold predictions and how they'll all be wrong.
Bold predictions. We are nailing us this year, honestly. Sam, you're still the only one who has a point, so you can go first.
Yeah, I think my point came courtesy of Alpine, actually, and I'm going to give them another shot at this. Colapinto, top 8 finish.
Not a bad introduction at all.
He could do it.
Alpine have got a working car, and, that's always a big question.
I actually think he's going to turn up in just clothes, and he will
that's
way
good.
Past the car. It's a good start. I think he will stand in a grid spot, and he'll go, hola, move out the way. And they'll go, okay.
He goes from Spanish to English after the first.
How many times, Ben? How many times have I had a character on the show that says hello in their native tongue and then speaks English, okay? Often with a slightly awful Essex accent.
He hasn't got Sergio Perez on the grid this year, though. So
no, that's true.
That is the classic catchphrase of Colapinto, though. Hola.
Hola, move out the way.
Move out the way.
Move out the way.
Yeah.
Also, he's with the French now, and he famously hates them.
They need to save the planet, bro. Harry, what's your bold prediction?
I completely forgot about that. My bold prediction is that one of the bloody Ferraris is going to get on the podium.
Charles Leclerc has one. Lewis Hamilton has none. They don't have a sprint race to, be good at for 10 minutes and then forget how to drive again. Who knows? Charles Leclerc was close last year, wasn't he? Or did he actually finish third? I can't remember. I think he might have finished third last year. So
honestly, in the pit of despair that is Ferrari, I don't remember.
I have a similar bold prediction to you, Harry, apart from it's the complete opposite. I don't think Ferrari are going to be very good. I've got both Ferraris will finish the race. They'll be classified, but they will collectively score 6 points or fewer.
So that's what, a 7th and 8th place or less?
An 8th and 9th place.
8th and 9th or less,
or
yeah.
like a 7th and a 12th. That will be it.
Okay, all right. Can't wait for Leclerc to finish 4th.
4th, 5th.
And Hamilton to DNF. So no podium and just more than 6 points.
Pole 1, 2, 3. Harry, what have you got?
Pole position, I have got Lando Norris. The win, I have got Lando Norris. Second place, I'm going for Oscar Piastri. And third, I'll go for Lewis Hamilton.
I have got a similar lineup. I've got pole position, Lando Norris. The win, Lando Norris. So I'm afraid we've cursed you here this weekend, Norris. Piastri in second and Max Verstappen in third. Sam?
I have got pole position Max Verstappen. I've got the win going to Oscar Piastri. I've got second place going to Max Verstappen and third place go to Lando Norris.
It feels like maybe the most normal pole 1, 2, 3 we've had in a while.
It does.